Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
Experimentation is the engine beneath every leap humanity has ever made. Nothing meaningful was discovered by playing safe, and nothing extraordinary was built by repeating what was already known. Yet modern society quietly trains people to avoid experimentation at all costs. From early on, you are taught to follow instructions, meet expectations, and minimize mistakes. This conditioning makes experimentation feel dangerous, irresponsible, even foolish. But progress has never belonged to the obedient. It belongs to those willing to test, to try, to step into uncertainty without guarantees. Experimentation is not reckless wandering. It is structured curiosity. It is the courage to ask what happens if I try this instead. Without it, potential stays theoretical forever. You can carry talent inside you for decades and never touch it if you refuse to experiment. The tragedy is not failure. The tragedy is never finding out what you could have become. Failure and experimentation are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. Every experiment contains the possibility of not working, and that possibility terrifies people conditioned to seek approval and certainty. Society rewards predictability because predictability is easy to manage. Experimentation disrupts systems. It produces individuals who cannot be easily categorized or controlled. That is why the message to experiment is rarely encouraged openly. Instead, people are guided toward narrow paths that promise safety in exchange for compliance. But safety has never produced greatness. Experimentation is how you test reality instead of accepting it. It is how you discover where your edge actually is, not where others told you it should be. You could be a world-class athlete and never know it because you never pushed past casual effort. You could be a painter with a unique voice and never discover it because you stopped at imitation. You could be a writer with something necessary to say and never find the words because you were afraid of being unoriginal. Talent does not announce itself fully formed. It reveals itself through trial, through repetition, through failure. Experimentation is the only process that separates fantasy from ability. Without it, your potential remains a guess. With it, potential becomes something measurable and real. Modern systems are designed to keep people busy but not curious. Productivity is praised. Exploration is not. People are rewarded for staying inside defined roles and punished for stepping outside them. This creates a culture where boredom and confusion are seen as problems to escape rather than signals of growth. But boredom is often the beginning of experimentation. Confusion is the doorway to discovery. Everyone who has ever built something meaningful started without clarity. They started by testing, adjusting, and failing repeatedly. The difference is they did not interpret that phase as proof they were incapable. They understood it was part of the process. Experimentation requires tolerance for looking foolish. Early attempts are rarely impressive. They are awkward, inconsistent, and unimpressive to outsiders. This is where most quit. They compare their beginning to someone else's decade of refinement and decide they lack talent. This comparison is fatal. Experimentation demands that you suspend judgment long enough to gather information. You are not trying to impress. You are trying to learn. Every failed attempt narrows the field. Every mistake removes what does not work. Over time, patterns emerge. Skill sharpens. Direction becomes clear. None of this happens without passing through mediocrity first. Failure within experimentation is not a verdict. It is feedback. When something does not work, it is not telling you to stop. It is telling you to adjust. But adjustment requires attention. It requires observation. Those who fail and learn progress rapidly. Those who fail and take it personally stagnate. Experimentation teaches resilience because it forces you to detach identity from outcome. You are not the experiment. You are the experimenter. That distinction changes everything. When you understand this, failure loses its power to paralyze you. Everyone starts bored and confused because experimentation begins in emptiness. There is no roadmap at the beginning. There is only curiosity and discomfort. The mind wants clarity immediately. It wants to know where this leads. But experimentation does not work that way. Clarity comes after engagement, not before. You act first, you test, you fail. Then insight appears. Those who wait for certainty never begin. Those who accept uncertainty gain experience. Experience is the only currency that buys clarity. The people who seem to have found their path early are often those who experimented widely without broadcasting it. They tried many things quietly, discarded most of them, and kept what resonated. Outsiders only see the final form and assume it was obvious all along. It never was. It was refined through trial. Experimentation is messy. It is inefficient. It is misunderstood. But it is also the only honest path to mastery. Every expert was once a beginner who tolerated confusion longer than others. To experiment is to reclaim authorship over your life. Instead of living by borrowed scripts, you test your own hypotheses. You stop asking who you should be and start discovering who you are. This process is deeply personal and cannot be outsourced. No one can experiment on your behalf. No one can fail for you. But no one can take away what you learn through direct experience. That knowledge becomes part of you. It compounds. It guides future decisions with precision that theory never provides. When you begin anything real, the first sensation is not excitement, it is disorientation. Early attempts feel worse than expected because your awareness has outrun your ability. This is the Dunning-Kruger entry phase, the moment where illusion collapses and reality steps in. At the start, you often think you understand the craft. You have watched others do it. You have consumed explanations, stories, highlights. Then you try and the gap reveals itself. Your output feels clumsy. Your results feel embarrassing. This is not failure. This is initiation. The mind hates this phase because it exposes how little you actually know. Many interpret that exposure as a signal to stop. They tell themselves they lack talent. In truth, they have only lost their false confidence. That loss is necessary. You cannot build something real on imagined competence. The uncertainty hurts because it strips you of ego before it gives you skill. Embrace that discomfort. It is the sound of illusion breaking so learning can begin. The uncertainty phase feels heavy because progress becomes invisible. When you start, you no longer get the dopamine of novelty, and you do not yet get the reward of competence. You are stuck in the middle, where effort is high and feedback is harsh. This is where most people quit. They confuse confusion with incapability. They assume that feeling lost means they chose the wrong path. But every meaningful path begins with this fog. Your brain is recalibrating. It is replacing assumptions with data. That process feels like regression because you are now aware of standards you could not see before. Your taste improves before your ability does. That gap is painful, but it is also proof you are progressing. Those who never feel it never go deep enough to matter. In the Dunning-Kruger entry phase, your inner voice becomes hostile. It points out every flaw. It compares your beginning to someone else's mastery. It tells you that others are naturally gifted while you are struggling. This voice is not truth. It is your ego fighting extinction. The ego wants to preserve the image that you were already good, already capable, already special. Learning requires the death of that image. Only when you accept that you are a beginner can you begin properly. The ones who advance are not those who silence doubt, but those who refuse to obey it. They show up again with humility instead of expectation. That is the difference between those who grow and those who disappear quietly. This phase is intentionally uncomfortable because it filters commitment. If progress felt good immediately, everyone would persist. Difficulty selects for seriousness. It asks one question repeatedly. Will you continue without validation? Will you continue while feeling incompetent? Will you continue when effort exceeds reward? The answer to these questions determines everything. Skill does not come from talent alone. It comes from surviving this phase long enough for repetition to do its work. Every master you admire passed through this same valley, unseen and undocumented. They did not escape uncertainty. They endured it. Modern culture hides this phase from view. You see finished products, not early drafts. You see champions on podiums, not their months of confusion. This distortion makes beginners feel isolated. They believe something is wrong with them because their experience does not match the polished narratives they consume. This is deliberate. A population that quits early is easy to manage. A population that embraces uncertainty becomes unpredictable. That is why you must normalize feeling lost. Feeling lost means you are no longer pretending. It means you are actually learning. The Dunning-Kruger entry phase also teaches patience. You cannot rush competence. You cannot shortcut repetition. The mind wants certainty and control. Learning demands surrender to process. This surrender feels like weakness, but it is discipline. It is choosing to stay while others flee. Each time you continue despite uncertainty, you reinforce a deeper identity. You become someone who does not require immediate success to justify effort. That identity will carry you further than motivation ever could. Motivation fades. Identity remains. You will notice that your perception sharpens during this phase. You start seeing details you ignored before. You notice mistakes others make. You recognize complexity where you once saw simplicity. This can be discouraging because it highlights how far you have to go. But it is also empowering. Awareness is the foundation of mastery. You cannot correct what you cannot see. The discomfort you feel is proportional to the clarity you are gaining. The sharper your perception, the more honest your self-assessment becomes. That honesty is a gift, even when it stings. Many abandon the path right before momentum begins. The irony is that improvement often accelerates after the most discouraging period. The mind adapts quietly. Neural connections strengthen beneath awareness. One day, things begin to click without warning. Movements feel smoother. Decisions come faster. That breakthrough is not sudden. It is delayed. It is the result of showing up through uncertainty. If you quit early, you never reach that point. If you stay, the fog eventually lifts. Embracing the uncertainty phase means reframing discomfort as evidence of alignment. You are not lost because you are incapable. You are lost because you have stepped into territory where growth is required. This phase is not meant to be comfortable. It is meant to reshape you. It removes arrogance and replaces it with curiosity. It strips entitlement and installs work ethic. It prepares you for the responsibility of competence. Without it, mastery would be shallow and fragile. Competition feels overwhelming only when you look at the surface instead of the structure beneath it. From a distance, the world looks crowded with ambition, saturated with talent, packed with people chasing the same outcomes. But that perception is an illusion created by noise. Most people do not try to do great things. They talk about it. They think about it. They fantasize about it late at night. But when it comes time to act consistently, to endure boredom, to survive early failure, they disappear. 95% never enter the arena in any meaningful way. They stay in preparation mode forever, mistaking consumption for progress. The few who do act loudly dominate your attention, making it seem like competition is everywhere. In reality, you are not surrounded by rivals. You are surrounded by spectators who quit before effort becomes uncomfortable. The illusion deepens because visibility is not evenly distributed. A tiny fraction of people produce most of the noise. That 0.1% posts constantly, speaks confidently, and projects certainty even when they are still figuring things out. Algorithms reward volume, not depth. Attention rewards repetition, not mastery. You begin to believe the field is crowded because the same few faces keep appearing. But you are not seeing the millions who never ship anything, never practice long enough to matter, never survive the early phase where progress feels slow and unrewarding. Loudness skews perception. Silence hides reality. True competition exists only among those willing to stay after enthusiasm fades. That group is far smaller than you think. Most people quit before they even qualify as competition. 2 weeks is the average lifespan of ambition. 2 weeks of excitement, of planning, of telling others what they are going to do. Then resistance appears. Doubt enters. Progress feels slower than expected. Instead of adjusting expectations, they conclude the path is wrong. They blame competition, claiming the space is too saturated, too late, too difficult. This is not analysis. It is avoidance disguised as logic. Competition becomes a convenient excuse to exit without admitting fear or impatience. Those who persist do not because they are fearless, but because they see through this illusion early. Real competition begins months in, not days. It begins when novelty is gone and only discipline remains. It begins when external validation disappears and you must rely on internal commitment. At that stage, the field thins dramatically. Many who looked confident early vanish quietly. Their accounts go inactive. Their projects stall. Their dreams dissolve into rationalizations. If you are still standing after that phase, you are no longer competing with the masses. You are competing with a small group of individuals who have learned to endure. That is a much fairer fight than you imagined. The fear of competition often masks a deeper fear of inadequacy. It is easier to believe others are too far ahead than to confront the discomfort of being a beginner. It is easier to say the market is crowded than to admit you are unwilling to be bad at something publicly. But greatness has never been reserved for those who arrived first. It has always belonged to those who stayed longest. History does not reward early interest. It rewards sustained effort. Competition is not about how many start. It is about how many finish. When you zoom out far enough, competition almost disappears entirely. Most people are competing only with their own inconsistency. They are not blocked by others. They are blocked by distraction, by lack of structure, by impatience. If you can do one thing better than average, show up consistently, you immediately place yourself ahead of the majority. If you can do 2 things well, you enter rare territory. Excellence is scarce, not because talent is rare, but because persistence is. That is why competition feels intense only at the beginning, when everyone still believes they will last. The modern world amplifies the illusion by constantly comparing beginnings to endings. You see someone's polished result and compare it to your first attempt. That comparison is unfair and paralyzing. It makes you think the gap is unbridgeable, when in reality it is bridged through time and repetition. Most people never cross that gap because they quit while it still feels wide. They do not realize that the gap narrows quickly for those who keep moving. Competition is not about beating others. It is about surviving the phase where quitting feels reasonable. Those who succeed quietly understand this. They do not waste energy worrying about competition. They focus on building skill, refining process, and staying present long enough for momentum to accumulate. While others scan the horizon looking for threats, they work. While others debate whether it is worth starting, they improve. By the time the warriors realize the competition was exaggerated, the builders are already ahead. Not because they were special, but because they did not leave. The belief in overwhelming competition keeps people passive. It keeps them consuming instead of creating. It keeps them waiting for perfect conditions that never arrive. This belief is useful to systems that benefit from conformity. It is not useful to individuals who want to build something meaningful. Once you see how few people truly commit, the fear evaporates. You realize the path is far more open than advertised. You stop asking if you can win and start asking how long you are willing to stay. If you want to do great things, you need time to think, and real thinking does not happen in crowds. It happens in separation. It happens when there is no one watching, no one interrupting, no one feeding you opinions before your own have fully formed. Solitude is not loneliness. It is a working state. It is the condition under which the subconscious is allowed to finish sentences the conscious mind keeps interrupting. Most people never experience this because their lives are built around constant input. Notifications, conversations, obligations, noise layered on top of noise. Their minds are always occupied, never settled. They confuse business with progress. In reality, business is often avoidance. Thinking deeply requires stillness, and stillness feels uncomfortable to those who have spent years reacting instead of reflecting. Time alone is not a retreat from life. It is preparation for a deeper engagement with it. The subconscious does not speak in headlines or instant answers. It works slowly, quietly, connecting fragments over time. When you remove yourself from external information, you give it space to operate. Ideas that felt incomplete begin to align. Questions you could not answer start resolving without effort. This process cannot be rushed. It cannot be multitasked. Every interruption resets the work. That is why great breakthroughs often arrive during walks, long drives, silence, or isolation. Not because those moments are magical, but because they are uninterrupted. Most people never give themselves this luxury. They feel guilty for not being available. They feel anxious without stimulation. They have been trained to believe that value comes from constant responsiveness. In truth, value often comes from the ability to disappear long enough to think clearly. External information is not neutral. Every conversation pulls your attention outward. Every piece of media injects foreign priorities into your mind. Even well-meaning advice can derail original thought if it arrives too early. When you are thinking deeply, premature input can distort the process. It can close questions that needed to stay open longer. It can impose conclusions before exploration is complete. This is why separation matters. You are not running from people. You are protecting a fragile process. The subconscious does its most important work when it is not being overwritten by noise. If you never remove yourself, you will spend your life thinking other people's thoughts and wondering why nothing you create feels truly yours. Most people do not understand this because their identity is tied to availability. They feel important when they are needed, when they are included, when they are busy. Stillness threatens that identity. In silence, there is no external validation. There is only you and the quality of your inner world. Many avoid this because it exposes confusion they have been masking with activity. But confusion is not a flaw. It is a signal that something deeper is trying to form. Great thinkers throughout history understood this instinctively. They guarded their solitude fiercely, not because they disliked people, but because they respected the process of thought. Time alone also recalibrates your sense of direction. When you are constantly around others, your goals begin to drift. You absorb ambitions that are not yours. You start optimizing for approval instead of meaning. Solitude strips this away. In isolation, you confront what actually matters to you, not what sounds impressive. You hear your own priorities without interference. This clarity cannot be crowdsourced. It must be earned through time spent away from the noise. Without it, you may achieve things, but they will feel hollow because they were built on borrowed motivations. There is a difference between isolation that weakens and isolation that strengthens. The kind that strengthens is intentional. It has purpose. It is not hiding. It is incubation. During this time, you are not idle. You are processing, integrating, synthesizing. Your subconscious is running simulations, testing ideas, resolving contradictions.